We just got through with an alignment, the alignment with Venus. We see a softening of the magnitudes, but we knew Venus was riding way too high on the western horizon, and that means, you know, it's further away from the sun. So if it's further away from the sun, when it passes by, it could be closer to Earth than it's ever been since the Sumerians. And people were noticing Venus riding high in the sky. I was more concerned about the brightness because the implications were of radiation and photon energy. So a very bright Venus, and when at its brightest, it's so amazing. You look at it through a telescope, it's only half lit. When Venus during solar maximum looked like a jet liner landing in your cul-de-sac, it was only half lit. So there was something there that was dangerous to us, and I decided to be the one to sound the alarm. Once you have information and you conceal it concerning health, I feel that is immoral, and it's your civic duty, and your just earthly and universe expectation is that you don't keep that a secret. So we had some high 6-pointers in Indonesia and South America, and interesting enough, they were roughly in the same regions, both of them, and we're talking high 6-pointers. So we've seen earthquakes during these alignments. We even thought we had an alignment with brown dwarfs, but we didn't see the stretched out pattern that we normally see with big body alignments of 10 and 14 day earthquake clustering greater than 6, usually ending in a bigger quake. So, but when the moon is more elliptical, and it's so much more elliptical, it's pulling your oceans inland. And if you go to the other side of these king tides, you'll see the tide does go out quite far. And when the moon's more elliptical, then the rest of the solar system has to be more elliptical. Physics dictates that must happen. There's no way around it unless you're trying to deal with something and try to say it has something to do with electricity or something. But physics is electricity, and electricity is physics. And in the span of a month, when through a telescope, this is off of an astronomy telescope, this is off of an astronomy website, and they're comparing before and after images of Mars. And two things should jump out at you: the increased size over 1 month, number one, and number two, all the planets are furthest from the sun in around June. In the northern hemisphere summer, we're actually further away from the sun than we are in the southern hemisphere summer. So the solar system is slightly elliptical, and that gave birth and rise to the theory of Planet X, a term brought up by astronomers working with, for, and by NASA. So we have a sudden that's pretty big size difference. And yes, this could be Photoshop. Yes, this could be a hoax. Yes. But it kind of fits with supermoons. Look how big the moon is tonight. And tell me if the moon's more elliptical in its orbit. And we featured science, very technical science, articles talking about why and how the moons become more elliptical, and they use the word change. It's not supposed to change. That's the problem. So when we talk about energy, it's not only energy coming off the sun, but if this kind of energy is being created in our magnetic field, what kind of energy is being created in the sun's magnetic field? So the same thing that's causing this energy to be more in the earthly background and near Earth background also affects the sun. Hence, more particles. What kind of particles? Neutral helium. Should sound safe, doesn't it? And electrons. Some of the electrons are running with the helium. Helium conducts electricity, fantastic. Doesn't affect electrons whatsoever if helium is neutral. But the more particles you have in the solar system, the more particles you have in your magnetosphere, the more particles you will have in your stratosphere and mesosphere and whatever other sphere you want to talk about. Neutrons, these have been going up, and we know they've been going up, and they usually go up in solar minimum because we're not pushing out these second source of neutrons. But when you heat the Earth and then all of a sudden you dump methane, all kinds of methane, then things go bizarre. And so you look for what could be causing this, and you say particles are causing this, and you go to these simulations and you can actually see the influence of these particles. Here's one that shows a nice expansion of our magnetosphere, comes a slight compression, and down below the bottom line is Earth radii distance. When these compressions happen, you see these tight swirls. Sometimes they're significant, and this last month there's only been a couple of these really significant ones. So it seems like the pulsation of particles that are coming in are less, but they have to conform to particle and fluid dynamics. So when you have electrons, though, that are magnetic, they have to get pulled around. You see that oval vertical shape? Well, that's what happens when rapid round electrons cross each other's paths and create a spiral. And you want to look down on it, and there it is. There's your spiral. Sorry about that noise. I try not to hit that when I talk. So this is like looking down on a turnstile or a revolving door. If you're at Earth and you're looking off in the equatorial plane, you're going to see stuff going by you from left to right or right to left, depending on which way that turnstile turns. So you're looking down on the solar system. So these particles are coming through, and they're not causing geomagnetic storms because they're neutral particles, most of them, and electrons. Now, when the electrons come through more than ever before, when they come through, they get focused back around, and you get these multiple rings. You get the oval shape. You get straight line, a straight vertical line in your tail stream, where there's a energy differentiation between blue, light blue, and dark blue tail stream of Earth, looking down on Earth, and you see a sudden expansion, a nice uniform expansion like a shotgun. And that's what electrons do. They get focused back around, or Earth tries to pack them in at the equator or circle them back around to the poles. So the ones that resist most of the gravitational or magnetic pull get bent back around and can actually come in at the equatorial regions, and that's why you see your highest equatorial counts are, because that's where most of them occur. You get them in the poles too, but when you're looking at strictly electrons, there's, for some reason, why are you seeing them at the equator? So, but this heats your land temperatures, and the land temperatures are running 25-30 degrees above what in the records as air temperatures. So something's really heating land and water. The neutrons carry with them twice the harm value of uranium and plutonium. There's diagrams about these particles explaining them specifically, having them come from one direction. Graphs showing the existence of particles and energy go up and up and up when you get into the ultraviolet range of 300 to 350. Therefore, predictions can be made of huge changes coming in the solar irradiance. So you see, if you thought the sun was a little wider, brighter, and hotter, it's the corona of the sun being affected by particles. And you look for evidence of those particles all about the solar system. Not even just here on Earth and not our magnetosphere and just the sun's magnetosphere. You look at all the planets and all their moons, and you look at interplanetary space, because if there was a cloud of neutral helium in the solar system, we know several things. It's coming from one direction. Or it used to be. So the corona is wider and hotter, and what amazes me is the photography. You can use a filter and the sun is still white. I used to stand in San Diego, watch the sunset with my naked eye, and every day, and did it in Hawaii when I was a kid, and it was yellow, and we took pictures of it with our 35 millimeter, and even watched my dad record it with his 8 millimeter video camera, the entire sunset. 3 pair of sunglasses is not too much. So what do you think that does to Earth? What do you think that does to Earth? Sorry about that background noise again. So they tried to cover up the helium. I went back and tried to chronicle every instrument that reported on helium or lithium. They're gone, and the ones that did measure it, it looks like they're revisiting and kind of like dialing down. It's like, well, what did we pay you for in the first place? X-rays off the sun used to come at us pretty brightly. And all of a sudden, the X-rays go down. And indeed, sunspots create a lot more X-rays. But we know helium absorbs X-rays. So the solar irradiance climbing, the certain visible light climbing higher. Ultraviolet has been phenomenal. And you've got to wonder why the acceleration. And if it's associated with the approach of an object, that object has acceleration. So the closer it gets, the more dense its particles become. But that, I just ran through a bunch of irradiance measurements. It doesn't show you a colder sun, and you know it when you go outside. And so when somebody puts gloom or doom in a title, in a science title, they better be knowing what they're doing. And we don't use that. I haven't used it. And we've even talked down the Mayan calendar, 2012. But there's a funny story about that, but I'm not going to tell it right this time. But so some of these particles are electrons. A, because of collisions release electrons. B, because helium has electrons to donate. So passing through the corona of the sun would release a lot of free electrons. And so when there's a whole lot of low energy electrons, that's usually what's coming from a brown dwarf. But you can see more than one belt, and these are energy belts, and the stronger your electron, the deeper and closer it gets to Earth. But the ones that fly by can wrap around, and you can see it looks like an apple core or the sprout on the top of a tomato, but or a fish tail, but this is very telling of wrap around, and notice the getting focused in towards the equatorial region of the tail string. And looks like an apple to me, but it's sideways. The apple's pointing off to the left. And you're going to pop the stem. It'll be at the 9 o'clock position there. So these particles lately have been diminishing in terms of the spirals. They're getting tighter, smaller, slower amplitude. So that tells me we pass through a focusing cone. Thus, that focusing cone is directional. From the direction we thought this brown dwarf was, well, we just seem to pass right through its focusing cone because it's emitting helium and electrons all the time. And then the helium is releasing electrons. The helium mapping in the solar system, you can see is, you see like a cone shape. You can see a concentration in the middle. I mean, that's a very dense concentration there in the middle. So when you map the whole solar system against, like from outside looking in, you can see there. Running by you are instruments that measured helium, helium being the major element found in brown dwarfs, and heavier elements like lithium and beryllium. So all of these graphs that we used to prove the sun was cooking the earth, that carbon dioxide wasn't an issue, that methane is worse, but all of these things that would prove all that I have told you, and that we have used to prove what's been told, they're gone now. I mean, it's frustrating, but it proves we were right. It proves we were right on the money. It just proves that you should be aware of what's happening with the climate. And if you're trying to grow food, I tell you, it's pretty rough if you don't cover your or control the shade. Now, talking about and putting the word gloom in a title is sad to me, because this is really a good representation of my boat that I'm partnered with. It's going to go up for sale. It has twin outboards. It gets horrible gas mileage. You can't even stow gasoline on and in it because it weighs you down and you don't get that much more range. But it cuts through the waves. It is smooth as can be. Its a huge back deck was extended on this boat. We literally could dance 6 people in that back open area. You could just literally crank the stereo and do that. The radar worked beautifully, and I've had some of the greatest moments of my life on this boat. It was incredible, and it was more complicated and more expensive than we wanted it to be. But when you sit on the tongue out there on the front, and you're going up and down on the waves, and the wind's coming right in your face, and all you smell is this ocean air, and then right you look down, and almost as you can touch with your feet, there's these porpoises swimming sideways looking up at you, and they're having so much fun as you, and it's tremendously rewarding, and you get a tremendous respect for how awesome, how great, how wonderful, how fantastic, how beautiful, how diverse, how important these bodies of water really are. And it's sad to see such a large body of water die. So if I say doom and gloom, it saddens me. It's very, very sad. and it's depressing, and it makes me worry about, the people below me and on the family tree. It just, all my nieces and nephews, and all my family. You wonder what's going to happen, and so being self-sufficient is, I think, very, very important. And people want to know why the toilet paper went during this epidemic, and it was the show Preppers on National Geographic. There are a couple people who are pandemic paranoid, and I thought they were a little crazy and poisoned because they were healthcare people. But we have a twisted sense of reality, and there is a really good chance that all those people taking lots of toilet paper were preppers that already had the food and the water. So they were like, oh shoot, we forgot toilet paper. And while you were out buying food, they were out buying toilet paper. So anyways, getting prepared is absolutely essential. What the things we talk about are public record, in the scientific record. There's nothing a mystery. The physics, sometimes people twist it around, because when you talk about exotic particles, we don't know where they came from. So that, I think we know just about everything anymore, and they're only sharing with us 30% of what they know. So the radiation's been going up. We know why the radiation's going up, and every single symptom, including devilish wildfires that take out millions of hectares and takes out your wildlife and your sea life. They're related. The fire on land is related to the plankton blooms in the sea, and the oxygen depletion in the sea. The melting of the ice is related to the apocalyptic fires. The dying oceans, the food chain, it's already up onto the mammals. And what's left? Their surface temperatures are so hot. So be prepared, not scared.